I've replayed that night in my head more times than I can count. Every detail, every face, every damn second. It was a Friday night, and my wife, Leanne, and I had been invited to a friend's housewarming party. Tyler, an old college buddy of mine, had just bought a new place out in the suburbs. Nothing too fancy, but the kind of place you show off with beers, barbecue, and half-drunk games of charades. The whole neighborhood was invited. The vibe was chill. People were catching up. Couples were laughing. And Leanne seemed to be in her element, talking to everyone, drink in hand, glowing. She wore this black backless dress, the kind that makes you notice her before anyone else, the kind that used to be just for me. But that night, something about how she moved made me feel like I was watching a stranger. About an hour in, my phone buzzed. It was work, an unexpected call from a West Coast client. And since I handle our contracts personally, I excused myself and stepped outside to take it. It wasn't even 10 minutes. The call went fast, just some questions about logistics. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have Leanne, how even after 7 years together, I still looked at her like the first night we met. And then I walked back in. First, nothing seemed out of place. The music was still playing. People were chatting. But as I made my way through the living room toward the kitchen, I noticed something strange. 2 people slipped out the side hallway quickly, almost like they didn't want to be seen. The woman's hair looked familiar. The guy was taller, wearing that same dark blue flannel I'd seen earlier on one of the guests. Tyler's coworker, I think. I remember freezing just for a second. I didn't want to assume, but something didn't sit right. Leanne wasn't in the kitchen or the living room or on the patio with the others. I started looking for her, half smiling like I was just exploring, but inside my chest had started to tighten. I checked the upstairs bathroom. Nothing. Then, in the hallway near the guest bedroom, I heard it. A giggle, faint, but unmistakable. It was Leanne's laugh. I know that laugh. I'd heard it during late nights, pillow talks, road trips. Hell, it was the sound I'd fallen in love with. But this time, it wasn't for me. I opened the door slowly. I don't even know why I did it quietly. Instinct, maybe. Some dumb part of me still hoping I was wrong. What I saw didn't just hurt. It detonated something inside me. Leanne was standing close to that guy in the blue flannel. Real close. Her hands were on his chest. His were on her waist. She hadn't kissed him yet, but the air between them, you could have set it on fire. They didn't see me at first. I had that 1 second to decide whether to explode or retreat, and I froze. Again, she said. We shouldn't. But her voice was soft, breathy, not convincing. He leaned in, and I finally found my voice. Leanne. They jumped apart like kids caught stealing. She turned to me, eyes wide, mouth open, but not a word came out. I didn't yell. I didn't punch. I didn't run. I just stared at her. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't a one-time thing. You don't get that comfortable with someone in one night. There's more, so much more. But I'll save that for the next part because this wasn't just betrayal. It was a full-blown unraveling of everything I thought I knew. She just stood there, silent. That same woman who once cried during a wedding vow renewal commercial couldn't say a single word to her husband standing in the doorway. The silence stretched, loud in its own right. Tyler's hallway suddenly felt colder, smaller, like the walls were closing in. And still, neither of them moved. The guy, later I'd learn his name was Brandon, stepped back first, hands off, eyes wide, like I was about to knock his teeth out. But I wasn't that guy. Not anymore. Leanne, however, looked like she had been caught cheating on a final exam. Less devastated and more annoyed. That stung more than anything. Not guilt, not fear, annoyance. I finally broke the silence with the only thing that came to mind. How long? Her mouth opened, but there was no sound. Then she blinked like she was calculating. Not confessing, calculating. Jax, she started. Please, let's just talk outside. Outside? I laughed bitterly. No, don't bother. You already had your outside moment. Now it's my turn. Brandon looked like he wanted to vanish into thin air. I turned to him and said calmly, You should go. He bolted like the walls were on fire. Just left her there with me. Leanne followed me back downstairs, trying to whisper explanations I wasn't listening to. Something about feeling alone lately, and it didn't mean anything. But every excuse she made only added to the weight I felt inside. You don't lean into a man like that at a party unless you've done it before. That wasn't a one-time temptation. That was routine. Back at the main area, the party was still going. Laughs, chatter, clinks of glasses. It all felt fake now, like I was watching actors in a play I didn't want to be part of anymore. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, Tyler, oblivious, shouted, "There you are. You guys gotta come out back. We're doing shots." I looked at Leanne. Her cheeks were flushed, but she wasn't crying. She looked embarrassed, not remorseful. That's when I noticed someone else watching us. A woman across the room, short, dark hair, red wine in hand. I didn't know her, but her eyes were locked on Leanne like she knew something. Later, I would learn her name was Madison, and Madison knew everything. I whispered to Leanne, "I'm leaving. If you're smart, you won't follow me." She tried to grab my arm. "Please, Jax, don't make a scene." Pulled away. "The scene already happened, Leanne. You just forgot the audience." I walked out that door and didn't stop until I reached my car. The cold air hit me like a slap, but it felt cleaner than anything inside that house. I sat in the driver's seat, hands shaking, not from rage, but from the shock of how fast everything collapsed. Couldn't even cry. I just stared ahead. Then my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "You don't know me, but you need to hear the truth. What you saw tonight was just the surface." I stared at the message, frozen. The text was followed by a photo. Leanne and Brandon in a different setting, different clothes, different night, same betrayal. And that's when I realized I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife. I was about to uncover a whole double life. Let me tell you what happened next. It gets worse, much worse. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even go home. I parked in a 24-hour diner lot and just sat there for hours, staring at that photo on my phone. Leanne and Brandon were at a cozy little rooftop bar, leaning into each other like a couple on vacation. Same man, same woman, same betrayal. But it wasn't from that night. It was clearly taken weeks, maybe even months earlier. The timestamp in the corner said March 16th. That hit hard because on March 16th, I had just flown back from Seattle after visiting my dad in the hospital. Leanne had claimed she was too busy with work to come along. And now I knew why. At around 5:30 a.m., I replied to the unknown number. "Who is this?" Seconds later, another message came through. "We'll meet. Public place. Today. 3 p.m. The Lotus Cafe." I should have blocked the number, deleted the message, and walked away. But when everything you've built your life around starts to crumble, curiosity becomes the only rope you have left to grab onto. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want justice. I just needed the truth. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted someone to tell me I wasn't crazy for how shattered I felt. By the time I walked into Lotus Cafe that afternoon, I was running on 3 hours of broken sleep and a head full of what-ifs. And then I saw her, Madison, the woman from the party. She waved me over before I even had a chance to scan the room. "Jax, right?" she said, offering a nervous smile. I sat down, unsure of how to even start. "How do you know me? How do you know them?" Madison sipped her coffee, then leaned forward. "Leanne doesn't just cheat. She's part of something uglier than you know." I frowned. "What does that mean?" She glanced around, then pulled out her phone. "I used to work at that marketing firm with her. Brandon was my manager. But the real issue isn't just those two. It's their circle. They call themselves the Thursday Club. Ever heard of it?" I shook my head slowly. "It's not an official thing, just a group of people, married, single, whatever. They get together every other week at different places, sometimes bars, sometimes houses. They have rules. Phones off, no social media, no names. It's all supposed to be discreet fun, but it's basically just a rotating partner swap under the excuse of freedom. Leanne and Brandon have been regulars for over a year. I felt like someone had just slammed my head into a wall. "You're saying she's been cheating with more than just Brandon?" Madison nodded, her voice softening. That rooftop photo, I took it. I was at that Thursday club night. I quit after that. Couldn't stomach it. Leanne isn't who you think she is, Jax. She acts sweet and polished in public, but she's been living a double life for a long time. I didn't want to believe her. I wanted to believe Leanne had slipped up just once, made a terrible mistake, and got caught. But my gut knew Madison wasn't lying. There were signs. Late-night work events. New lingerie she never wore around me. Charges on our joint account that she brushed off. The emotional distance that grew so slowly I almost didn't notice it until I was standing outside that guest bedroom watching it all fall apart. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Madison hesitated. "Because my sister went through something similar. She ignored the signs until it was too late. I didn't want to stand by and let another good man get torn apart by someone playing games with people's lives." I sat back in the booth, heart pounding. "What do I do now?" She looked me dead in the eye. "You find the rest of the truth. And when you have everything, you decide whether to walk away quietly or burn every lie to the ground." That night, I returned home. Leanne was there, sitting on the couch like a bomb waiting to explode. She looked at me like she'd been crying for hours. "Jax, we need to talk." I stood in the doorway holding my phone, scrolling through more photos Madison had just sent. I'm not the one who needs to do the explaining. And that was the beginning of a very long, very dark confrontation. Want to hear what she said? Because her confession, if you can call it that, changed everything I thought I still had left to lose. I stood in the doorway of our living room longer than I should have, just watching her. Leanne looked small, almost unrecognizable, wrapped in one of my old hoodies with her knees pulled to her chest like a kid who got caught sneaking out past curfew. There was no wine glass in her hand. No phone, just silence. The kind that tries to fool you into thinking there's still something worth saving. She looked up slowly. "You didn't come home last night." I closed the door behind me without answering and walked past her, sitting on the opposite couch like she was someone I didn't know anymore. Because she was. I wasn't sure who I had been living with for the past few years. But it wasn't this Leanne. Not the one involved in secret clubs, hiding in bedrooms with other men, faking loyalty while I slept beside her every night. "Where were you?" she asked softly. "I could ask you the same. But we'd be here all night listing places you've been that I don't know about. Right?" I said, keeping my voice even. "Let's cut to it. I talked to someone. Her name's Madison. She told me everything." Her expression changed in an instant. Not guilt, not fear. It was something worse. Recognition. Like she already knew Madison would be the loose thread that unraveled her entire cover. "I can explain," she began. "No," I interrupted, leaning forward, elbows on my knees. "Don't explain. Just tell me how long it's been going on. How long have you been living a separate life while pretending to share one with me?" She stared at the floor. "A year and a half." I closed my eyes for a second. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a couple of months, maybe even a one-time thing that spiraled. But 18 months, that was longer than most relationships even lasted. And it wasn't even just Brandon. I knew that now. The Thursday club wasn't a fling. It was a pattern, a choice, one she kept making again and again behind my back. "You remember when my dad had his stroke?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "I was gone for 5 days. You said you had meetings, late shifts. You even sent flowers to the hospital. The whole time you were sleeping with him, weren't you?" She didn't deny it. That silence hit me like a brick wall. "You wore that red dress to dinner the night I got back," I continued, voice tightening. "You hugged me like you missed me. You cried when I told you he was getting better. But you'd already betrayed me before I even stepped off the plane." She wiped a tear, but I didn't care anymore. Tears were cheap now. I'd spent years earning those eyes. And she sold them to strangers in bars and bedrooms I'd never walk into. "I didn't plan it this way," she whispered. "At first, I just felt lost. You were always working and I cut her off. Don't you dare blame this on my job. I worked to give us something better. I thought I was building a future for us. Turns out I was just providing the house for your second life." Then she said something that actually stunned me. It wasn't always about the sex. Sometimes I just wanted to feel wanted, like someone was still chasing me. That hit different. Not because it justified anything, but because it showed how far apart we drifted without me noticing. She needed validation, and instead of telling me she was drowning, she chose to smile through the surface and secretly open a trap door. "Why didn't you just leave me?" I asked, genuinely confused now. "Why pretend?" She looked at me for the first time that night. Really looked. And then she said, "Because part of me still loves you." That made me angrier than any affair ever could. Because that was the cruelest lie of all. You don't love someone and feed them poison for breakfast. You don't love someone and then take pieces of their dignity and spread them across hotel sheets and bar stools like confetti. "You don't get to say that," I replied coldly. "Not anymore." I stood up. My body felt heavy, but my mind was clear for the first time in weeks. "I'm staying at a hotel for a few days," I said. "I'll have a lawyer contact you by next week." Her mouth opened, but I was already walking toward the door. Then she said one last thing before I left. "It's not just Brandon. There's something else you need to know. Something about someone close to you." I stopped in my tracks. "What do you mean, close to me?" But she just sat back down and stared ahead like she'd already said too much. That night, I didn't sleep again because what she said kept echoing in my head, louder than any betrayal I'd seen so far. Someone close to me, someone I trusted. There was more, and I wasn't ready for it. But it was coming fast. That night in the hotel, I didn't even bother to unpack. I just dropped the bag on the floor, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall. Everything Leanne had said was playing on a loop in my head. But one sentence haunted me the most. "There's something else you need to know. Someone close to you." I ran through a mental checklist of everyone in our life. My brother, my coworkers, our friends, even neighbors. But every time I thought I had narrowed it down, I'd second-guess myself. That's the damage betrayal does. It rewires your instincts to see monsters in every familiar face. By morning, I had barely slept. I needed answers, and I knew I wasn't going to get them from Leanne. She had dropped that bomb and locked herself in silence. But there was one person who might know more. Madison. I texted her again. She said, "There's more. Someone close to me." Do you know what she meant? She didn't reply right away, but when she finally did, her response made my stomach drop. "Meet me. I was hoping you wouldn't have to hear this from me." We met at a different cafe this time, somewhere on the edge of town. She looked more tense than before, pale, like holding on to this secret had physically exhausted her. "Madison," I said the moment we sat down, "just tell me. No more games." She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Your brother, Craig." I blinked. "What about him?" She looked me dead in the eye. "He's one of the men Leanne's been with." I leaned back, my chest tightening as if I'd just taken a hit. No way. Craig's my blood. He stood next to me at my wedding. He helped me build our deck with his bare hands. He babysat our niece when we were stuck out of town. He's family. Madison didn't flinch. Family doesn't always mean safe. I was shaking. I couldn't process it. I didn't want to believe it. But somewhere in the back of my mind, the pieces were already forming a bigger picture. That barbecue we hosted 2 summers ago when Leanne and Craig disappeared into the kitchen for nearly 20 minutes, looking for beer, while I manned the grill. The late-night texts I once saw on her phone from a number saved only as C. Her weird defensiveness whenever I brought up Craig crashing on our couch after nights out. I swallowed hard. "Do you have proof?" Madison opened her bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside were printed screenshots of messages, texts, and DMs. I recognized Craig's number. I recognized Leanne's writing style. Jokes, photos, explicit ones. Photos she never even shared with me. And the dates, they went back almost a full year. While Craig was supposed to be helping me recover after a minor surgery. While he was driving Leanne to appointments because I had work meetings. While I was thanking him for being there for her. I felt like I was going to throw up. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. Why? Why would she do this? Why would he do this? Madison just looked at me with sad eyes. Because people like them don't care about who they destroy as long as it feeds their ego. They get off on the secrecy, the thrill. You were just collateral. I sat there, numb, waves of nausea and rage pulsing through my body. The one man I thought I could rely on, my own brother, had stabbed me in the back deeper than I thought possible. I need to see him, I muttered, face to face. Madison reached out gently. Please, don't do anything reckless. Don't give them the satisfaction of watching you fall apart. Get your evidence. Protect yourself. Then decide how to end it with dignity. But I wasn't hearing her anymore. My mind was already racing. Not with revenge, but with the need to confront. I had to hear it from Craig's mouth. I had to look him in the eye and see if he even felt a shred of remorse for what he did to me. That evening, I drove straight to his place. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just showed up. When he opened the door and saw me, his face went white. Hey man, he said nervously, stepping back. Didn't expect you. Everything okay? I walked in without answering and tossed the envelope of screenshots on his coffee table. You tell me. He looked down at them. His eyes widened, his hands went still, and then he said, Jax, listen. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. That was all I needed to hear. I exploded, not violently, but with all the fury of a man who'd been betrayed by his own blood. Words poured out of me, years of trust collapsing into dust in a matter of minutes. Craig didn't fight back. He didn't deny it. He just stood there, eyes low like a coward, hiding from his own reflection. I walked out, slamming the door behind me so hard the walls rattled. My brother was dead to me. My wife was a stranger. My marriage was over. But the story wasn't, because what came next was the moment I decided to show the truth to everyone, even if it meant burning my entire old life to ash. For days, I didn't speak to Leanne or Craig. I shut off my phone, stopped going to work, and moved into a different hotel across town where no one could find me. It wasn't about hiding. It was about thinking clearly for the first time in what felt like years. I needed to make sense of what I just lived through. A marriage built on lies and a brother who betrayed me in the most personal way. The only thing that kept me grounded was the envelope of evidence Madison gave me. I must have looked through it 100 times, every message and timestamp stabbing deeper. But I wasn't sad anymore. I was just done. On the third day, I opened my laptop and wrote everything down. Not in some emotional journal, but a detailed, bullet-pointed timeline. Dates, names, places, events. I wasn't going to make the mistake of confronting them without facts. And I wasn't going to let them twist the truth. If I was going to dismantle this mess, I needed control, the kind I had lost the night I stepped out for that call. By the end of the week, I had everything. Hotel receipts, screenshots, old emails, credit card records. I even found a withdrawal and had made from our joint savings. $2,000 labeled Wellness Retreat. Turns out that retreat was a cabin weekend with Brandon. One of Madison's friends had tipped me off. And that was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just about heartbreak. This was a pattern of manipulation and selfishness I had enabled by looking the other way for too long. So I made a decision. I sent out invitations for a dinner. Not to everyone, just the core group. Tyler, Madison, my parents, her parents, and yes, Craig and Leanne. I told them I had something important to say and that I needed them all there. They came, probably out of curiosity, maybe even guilt. The dinner was held at a private back room of a restaurant I'd rented out. Classy, neutral ground, white tablecloths, and soft lighting. No one expected a storm was coming. Leanne arrived last, clinging to Craig's arm like she thought I didn't already know. She looked around nervously, then took a seat. Craig couldn't meet my eyes. I stood up before anyone even ordered. I called you here because I wanted you to hear the truth from me. Not rumors or half-baked stories. The room went quiet. I placed a stack of envelopes in front of everyone, including Leanne and Craig. What you'll find inside is proof. Proof of how my wife and my brother carried on an affair for over a year. Proof of how it started behind my back while I was caring for our dying father. Proof of the lies I've lived with, the things I was blind to, and the people who betrayed that trust. Leanne's face drained of all color. Craig shifted, visibly sweating. My mother looked horrified. Tyler's mouth fell open. Even Leanne's parents sat stunned, as if someone had pulled the air out of the room. I don't want pity, I continued. I don't want revenge. I want the truth to be seen for what it is. Not whispered behind closed doors, but laid bare. No more lies. No more secrets. Madison was the only one who nodded. Then I turned to Leanne directly. I'll be filing for divorce this week. You'll be served officially. And Craig, you're no longer my brother. You're just someone I used to know. Without waiting for replies, I grabbed my coat and walked out. Let them sit with it. Let them choke on it. Outside it was raining, but for the first time in a long time I felt clean. I didn't look back when I left the restaurant. I didn't want to see their faces. Didn't want to know who cried, who apologized, who tried to explain. That night wasn't about closure. It was about exposure. I wanted the truth out, and I wanted them to live in it. No more pretending. No more carefully constructed facades. If they wanted to act like none of it mattered, they could do it without me in the picture. Back at the hotel, I sat in silence for a long time, watching the rain smear across the window. I thought I'd feel hollow. I thought dragging everything into the light would drain me. But instead, there was a strange kind of calm settling in. I was free. Maybe not from the pain, not yet, but from the performance. No more checking Leanne's tone. No more guessing Craig's intentions. Just the facts, just the truth. The next morning, I woke up to over 20 unread messages. Some were from family, my mother heartbroken, my father furious at Craig. A couple were from Leanne's friends who had clearly picked sides. One of them actually had the audacity to say I should have handled it privately. And then there was Leanne herself. Please talk to me. We need to fix this before it gets worse. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Why would you do that? This doesn't have to be the end of us. I didn't reply, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because she still didn't get it. She thought the real damage was the dinner, the embarrassment, as if that was the betrayal, not the lies, not the cheating, not the year and a half of calculated deception. She was more upset about how things looked than what she had actually done. And that told me all I needed to know. Craig texted too. Just one message. I was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say that. I didn't answer that either. Some people you cut off clean. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. That week I filed the divorce papers. Clean, efficient, no drama. I attached a document with all the evidence. My lawyer was stunned by how much I had compiled. Said it was the most thorough case he'd ever seen for a no-contest split. Leanne's reply came through her attorney. No objections, just one request that I don't go public with anything beyond the people I'd already informed. I agreed. I didn't need to destroy her life. I just needed mine back. And slowly I started to rebuild. Quiet mornings, coffee without tension. Nights where I didn't wonder where she was or who she was with. No more second-guessing myself. No more paranoia pretending to be patience. I even went back to the gym, saw a few friends I'd lost touch with. I started sleeping again. Not just lying still, but actually resting. It was like breathing after being underwater for too long. But just when I thought I was done with it all, something happened. A message from Madison. Just 5 words. You should see this now. Madison's message came late in the evening. I was sitting on my small balcony, coffee in hand, legs stretched out, finally feeling like my heartbeat didn't come with a fist in my chest. The last thing I expected was another twist. But the message was there. Simple, urgent. You should see this now. I called her immediately. What is it? She answered right away. Don't worry. It's not bad. I just thought you'd want to see it before someone else showed you. Check your email. I opened it. Attached was a screenshot of a post, one from a private local group we were both part of, but I hadn't looked at in weeks. In it, Leanne had written a long public apology, not to me directly, but about me, about what she'd done. She confessed to the affairs, to lying, to betraying not just her marriage, but her own values. She didn't blame me. She didn't deflect. She owned every part of it. Madison was right. It wasn't bad. In fact, it didn't trigger rage or sadness. felt like closure. Real, final closure. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. Not because of her apology. Too little, too late. But because I didn't need anything from her anymore. Not answers, not validation, not redemption. I had let go of that weight, and what was left was peace. Over the next few months, I started living again, truly living. I got promoted at work, something I almost missed while drowning in stress. I joined a weekend hiking group where no one knew me as Leanne's husband, just Jax, just the guy who liked to walk uphill and breathe in something real. And one weekend, on a trail just outside of Boulder, I met someone. Her name was Elise. She wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, didn't try to sell herself with fake charm. She was warm. She laughed with her eyes, and she listened. Not like she was waiting to speak, but like what I said actually mattered. We talked the whole way back down the trail, and we kept talking week after week. No games, no pretending, just something honest, something new. I didn't rush anything. I wasn't chasing healing through someone else. I had done the work. I had found the ground under my feet again. But one night, sitting across from her, sipping wine, and watching her smile at the dumbest joke I'd made, I realized something. The worst thing that ever happened to me had made space for the best thing that ever could. I lost a false life, but I gained a real one. So to anyone reading this who's been betrayed, blindsided, broken, know this. You won't stay down forever. The pain ends. The shame fades. And what comes next? It might just be the most honest chapter of your story.